Hello, this is Terry Pugh from Elevated Learning. Again, we're picking up with tall versus wide data, and I explained to you the difference. And based on this example, right now we're looking at wide data where the same value is being spread across multiple fields. And when we use those multiple fields to get at the related values, we end up with this hierarchical representation of the data. So we need to change that. We need to pivot the data. So to pivot the data, what we're going to do is go back to the data source tab in the lower left corner. We're going to multi-select email, website, and phone number. I do that every time for some odd reason. And I'm going to click on the menu caret, and there's an option called pivot. So the idea is this. Let's say we had 10 rows. We'll keep the math simple. We have these 3 fields. And for each row, basically, these 3 fields will be duplicated with the appropriate corresponding values stored for each of those 10 rows. So 10 times 3 is 30. Instead of 10 records, we're going to have 30 records if we only had 10 records in our database. So I'm going to choose pivot. And what you will end up seeing are 3 fields that no longer exist. They are no longer valid in the database because of the pivoting process that Tableau went through. Now, you may not see this when you pivot with your data. You wouldn't see it if you have not used those fields on your report. We did use these fields on the report. So we can go ahead, multi-select these 3, and just delete them. They're no longer valid. And where the values are now held are just 2 fields. One field will be the name of those fields that we had, email, phone, and website. And the corresponding values are now held in a pivot field values. I have a question for you to think about. Do these fields remind you of specially created fields that Tableau generates? I want you to think about that. While you're thinking, let's go back to sheet 2, and I'm going to delete this sheet because it was just being used to help me explain the difference between tall versus wide data, or specifically what is wide data. I'm going to remove that sheet, and I'm back at sheet 1, and also let me rename this to customer contacts. All right, wonderful. Okay, I am now ready to look in my data window. I've already removed the invalid fields. They were also automatically removed when I deleted them from the column shelf. Now, what's a best practice is definitely to rename these fields. I'm going to rename pivot field names by right-clicking and choosing rename to contact preferences. Or contact preference. All right. And then the corresponding values of the contact preference is this pivot field values field. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on that and choose rename as well. And I will simply say used as contact. You could probably name it something better than I've chosen. All right, so for column labels, I want those names. And again, we renamed them to contact preference. So I'm going to drag that to the columns shelf. Now, this looks a lot better. And going back to the PowerPoint representation of our report, it looks fantastic. Only difference is we want to get rid of the column or row, column label in Tableau. So that's just a matter of right click and choosing hide field labels for columns. Okay, so that was a non-issue. All right, now Tableau is saying, okay, Terry, I have displayed for you the labels using the values of each of these blue pills. All right, but what you haven't given me is an actual value to display in the report. What am I summarizing? What is it that you want to visualize? Well, that is where the value used as contact comes into play. All right, so what we could do is just drag used as contact to the text shelf. And when we do that, it indeed shows us the accurate information. Yes, no for Alejandro Grove. Let's just kind of verify that real quickly. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint slide, and indeed Alejandro had an email preference, but no phone and website. So it looks good. The only issue is that we do not want to see any of the no's, and for the yeses, we want to see green check marks. So this is the last step in building this report. I'm excited about that, and I know you are too. So I will see you in the next video, and we're going to take care of that. Thank you.